Trustee Rubin.
Yes.
Trustee Hallwax is joining via phone, which he can do.
I'm here-ish, yeah.
And Trustee Mealopoulos.
Here.
And at this point, anyone here want to make public comment? Hearing and seeing none, then we'll move on. Could we, were the minutes okay, as published to us in our agenda package, or if no comments, if I could get a motion, please.
So move.
I'll second it, and Joe's on the phone, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. And with that, bringing us all to review the monthly financials, please.
Okay. All right, we'll be reviewing the March treasurer's report. James, so we'll go through all of the fund highlights. We'll do some CIP updates, and if you can believe it, we're already starting to talk about the calendar year 2026 budget. We'll be talking through the draft timeline for that today.
Happy tax day.
Oh, happy tax day, everyone. If you haven't filed.
Important day. You still have time.
Okay, in honor of tax day, we'll start talking about property taxes. We are in a weird timing issue in the first quarter, where we're kind of straddling the due date for property taxes. Taxes are still kind of trickling in through April. So right now, as of the end of March, we're still about $135,000 less than last year. But we're at 46.4% of budget. We're right on target with where we believe we should be. And the good news is that those will receive on time. So we have no reason to believe that won't happen again this fall. Cross our fingers again. Sales taxes this month were more than last year, but just slightly less than our monthly budget. This was for December sales. So we're about 27.6% of budget for the year. Nothing we could be panicked about yet, especially because we've had some strong months in January and February. This month, our utility tax, building permits, parking fees, garbage service fees, and sewer charges were all higher than last year and monthly budget. So that was a strong month for those revenues. And then our expenditures are higher than last year, but only 21.4% of budget. So we're really holding the line on those temporarily. Moving on to the water fund, our volumetric revenue is higher this year than it was this time last year. We're about 15.3% of budget, or 27,000 higher than last year, which is where I would expect with phasing in the new year's rate increases. So usage, I think, is pretty consistent year over year. On a fixed charge revenue, we're right on target, just shy of 25%, about $6,200, or yeah, $6,000. More than last year, and our expenditures are higher than this time last year at 12.4% of budget, just over $1,500 higher than last year. And this evening, I'm pleased to introduce Cesar Noriega, who is our assistant golf shop manager, and he's going to be filling in for Stella this evening.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So looking at our March performance, we experienced a slightly slower start to the month. This was mainly due to cooler temperatures that prevented us from opening the golf course. However, I'm pleased to report a significant increase in activity as the weather improved the final days of March. Consequently, we met our budgeted numbers for both rounds played and total revenue for the month. Our second point here is moving on to preparations for the start of the season. I'm happy to report that all the prep work required for the Tea Time Terrace, our temporary food and beverage trailer, was completed on schedule in advance of its opening day on April 1st. This included successfully connecting the temporary electric and water service, and also creating a designated space within the maintenance building to accommodate the necessary kitchen support equipment for the trailer operations. We've also made good progress on the initial site preparation work for the new clubhouse project. This important phase involved the removal of the strategically identified trees to clear the construction area. Additionally, we have successfully set up temporary electric service to support the ongoing operations of the pro shop the maintenance building, and the temporary restroom trailer, which is scheduled to be delivered on May 1st. That's a quick update for the golf club.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the remainder of our funds, the debt service, MFT and capital projects, expenditures are as expected, they're pretty minimal at this time of year. The village's first IEPA loan payment is on the April board agenda. That will be the first of our first installment debt payments that will be made this year. It's about $87,000. That's due, I believe by the end of this month or next. And then we just received the invoice for the rest of the village's debt payments. Those will be processed next month. So just as a reminder, in June, we make all of our first installment debt payments that are interest only. With the exception of the IEPA loan that does have a portion of principal in it as well. And then in December is when we aggregate all those property tax dollars and we make the principal and interest payment the second payment of the year. So those will be forthcoming. You'll see a large expenditure in the debt fund next month. From a personnel standpoint, full-time salaries and pension contributions continue to increase as planned. Overtime is actually slightly less this time of year as it was year to date from last year, which is good. I wouldn't expect that honeymoon to continue very long. We still have shortages, particularly in the public safety department. So I expect that number to catch up this year, at least with where our projections are at. The other things that are driving expenditures higher this year than last year is that third payroll in January. The payrolls just didn't line up year to year. So eventually that will catch up. And then we also completed a retroactive pay for our AFSCME bargaining unit folks. That was related to the collective bargaining agreement that was just approved by the village board. And we did issue retroactive pay back to January for those individuals. Okay. Annual revenue projections. This is where it's going to get interesting. So our, from an annual revenue projection standpoint, we're really low compared to budget. Our general fund is running 320,000 higher than what we originally budgeted. The water fund is just shy of 90,000 over what we originally budgeted. So if everything happens the way we expected, we'll be ending with a revenue surplus. When we add in expenditures into that equation, you'll remember that we budgeted a $4.8 million drawdown from the general fund. Right now, because of that revenue surplus, we're running a projection of to draw the fund down by $4.5 million. Again, if everything goes as planned. And then the water fund, that had a budgeted drawdown of $3.1 million. Because our revenues are doing well, we're projecting that to be only $2.8 million. So we'll continue to update that on a monthly basis. As of the month end, our general fund is at $18.4 million. This is one of the higher points in the year because of property taxes. So the money will go up. We'll draw it down over the summer and we'll replenish that in the fall. The water fund is at $6.1 million. It's about 86% of operating expenditures. And again, the lion's share of that is bond proceeds that we'll start to spend down as we see the Dundee water main project continue and we start to pay bills related to that project. Inflationary and economic impacts. It's been wild. Some days we have tariffs, some days we don't. You'll notice in the report, there's not a lot of detail on tariffs or what's going on in the economic environment right now. Mostly because A, it's been changing by the day, and B, because we're still assessing what, if anything, that will mean for us. Right now, our commodities are running lower than last year. Contractual services are running lower than last year. There's nothing to be alarmed about in terms of performance related to budget. It's really forward-looking of what could we potentially be facing. We have received some emails from some of our vendors that are planning on increasing prices. It is a good thing that we've acquired and purchased almost all of the vehicles that were budgeted this year. So we have a lot of that out of the way. We also made a proactive purchase of several servers that were in the capital plan for this year. and several laptops, just in anticipation of whatever delays or price increases that we may see down the road. We did acquire some of that equipment up front just to avoid those price increases. So what we're doing right now, similar to, for those of you that were around during COVID, we've assembled our staff teams and we're going through the budget line item by line item, just to identify those items that may be lower priority, those items that haven't started yet, that we might be able to delay or defer. We do plan on coming back to the finance committee, having that conversation. I don't think we have any reason to be alarmed just yet, but I think we would be silly to say that we don't need to be thinking about these things and planning for them, and at least have a list that we can reference so that the finance committee can adjust depending on what we see going forward. We are expecting price increases in some way, shape, or form. We're just not sure where those are going to land yet.
The contracts that we've already let. Do those have the ability to, do the vendors have the ability to bump our costs under those contracts for this?
Depends on the contract. Some of them are locked in pricing. Some of them have clauses in them that if they see price increases, that they're allowed to pass all or a portion onto us.
Okay.
Not letting this go into like a, since there's two lawyers in there. What's the recourse? I have friends who run small businesses who are absolutely busting contracts because they're gonna get annihilated if they try to fulfill contracts given some of the changes in prices of the last 3 weeks. So what is our thought and recourse if somebody breaks our contract? Just wouldn't use them again as a vendor, but we can't have recourse.
I think
Should I maybe wait until later to ask that question?
It depends.
Yeah.
On the circumstances, how much do you need the vendor? Right?
Right, are they
What are you gonna,
replaceable?
right, are they replaceable? What are you gonna spend to go get whatever it is you're gonna get? How much time?
Because it's not a
effort?
service issue or labor issue, it's purely materials. The materials I was going to provide you are
Right.
different now than they were.
Yeah,
Right, so it's,
You know, you could, it costs $100 to sue somebody. Just file a lawsuit, and, you know, you can always sue somebody. It's actually an interesting question. I think the defense that, oh, my costs have gone up, probably not a great defense. There are a whole laundry list. I've litigated them.
They should have written a better contract that.
Well, you know, look, it's probably a better defense if you're getting some out of China and it's 140%, and it's probably not as good a defense if it's 10
Right.
or 20.
Good point.
But, and the other thing is, okay, let's pretend it applies to everybody. They can't really start saying, okay, we just don't do any contracts anymore. There are theories, unconscionability, impracticability. I mean, there are these theories.
Yeah.
Which back in the day, I used to refer to as the laundry list of losing defenses. But you can do it and you never know. But in our case, you know, for one of our biggest contracts for millions of dollars, you could say, oh, okay, maybe. For a contract that's 40,000.
yeah, I think it really comes down to what it is we're talking about. You know, we have some level of anxiety as we walk into the clubhouse project. But I think there's also some level of expectation that given the timeline of when that project was bid, that there was at least something built into it to help to limit the impact of what might happen. The other reality that's hard, and as Nikki said, is that sometimes the tariffs are there and sometimes they're not. And does that mean they're just going to be there, right? Is the hedge that some of these vendors may make is that, well, the tariffs will come back, even if there's a 90-day pause or a 60-day pause. So I think given where we are with some of the projects, for instance, the water main project on Dundee Road, most of the materials are already here, right? Most of the materials are sourced and in hand. Where we look at, for instance, the board has on the agenda Thursday night, the salt contract for next year's salt deliveries. The possibility is there that something like that, a commodity that we won't have or may not get for 6, 8, 10 months, that price point could shift. And we have seen that happen with things like salt in the past, where situations came up where you just couldn't get it. So we had to augment in that contract. We actually didn't fulfill that contract on either side because they couldn't deliver and we couldn't receive because they couldn't deliver. So we found it elsewhere. So I think it's really going to depend on what it is we're talking about. You know, as Nikki said, I'm grateful that we kind of got our orders in early on vehicles. And that most of that is in progress. So that may not be an impact this year. I will tell you, my bigger concern is how we budget for next year. I'm not as concerned about this year. I think this year we're gonna figure it
We're
out.
starting budget early this year.
And
but
we are, yeah.
Maybe in 90 days, we'll.
We may know a little more, but I will say I do worry about commodities costs and project costs in 26 and 27. Because I think no matter what happens with the tariffs, there's going to be some heightened anxiety in the world of the types of contractors that we work with.
Yeah, and other people may be hoarding.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
front loading, whatnot, yeah. So I think it's really hard for everybody to budget.
But we're gonna try.
Sorry to derail.
No, it was a good question, really good question.
Yeah, so the lumber's shot way up. Well, contract will allow them to.
We can't say with absolute certainty because we don't have the contract in front of us, what they're allowed to do. That's something we'll look at. There is likely a ability to try to pass along significantly increased commodities costs as that, but I don't have that in front of me, so I couldn't tell you the exact number.
I think they are trying to order materials as quickly as possible to avoid these impacts. So even from our March approval, WBO, our construction manager, has been working with the subs to get that process going as quickly as possible to avoid these impacts.
Yeah, because none of this can be campaign data. None of this can be a huge shock. It's been in the paper every day.
Right.
Okay.
As we were talking earlier today, as we think forward next year's budget. I think Phil and my biggest concern are the pension funds and what that's going to mean. Just with the instability of the market, the ups and downs, it's all gonna matter on what the pension funds are valued as of December 31st of this year. What we will contribute going forward. So I would expect an increase in our pension contribution next year. Not just in public safety, but within IMRF as well. Some of us remember 2008 when IMRF lost 25% of its assets, like it could be a big swing. We do have smoothing with our actuarial study that can move some of the gains and losses. But if it's significant, we're definitely going to feel it. So that's going to be a big driving factor as we think about the budget going forward.
Interestingly, at this point, you know, looking a little bit outside of our direct world in terms of the village's day-to-day construction activity in the community is not slowing, at least at this point. As you know, Nikki showed in the treasurer's report, the building permit fee revenue is substantial in the first quarter. That's exempting essentially anything at Forest Edge, and we do expect that there's going to be several of those homes underway during the course of this year. Could that change? Yeah, it could, right? So as the bond market continues to get real shaky, and pushes up interest rates, and as commodities are more expensive or more difficult to source, you could see residential construction slowing. I do wonder whether that will be as true in the upper echelon of the market that we see here. You know, will that still slow it down, or will it slow it less or more? You know, these aren't, in most cases, these aren't spec homes, right? These are custom builds. So, but those are things that we're keeping our eyes on too, is, you know, how is the local economy responding to these kind of tumultuous times? So, but we could, that is something, again, that it's the value of these monthly meetings, is that we have the ability to kind of see where things are moving and work to adjust if we need to.
Questions? To the extent I can give you a crystal ball
So-
for the moment.
At the moment, but for all the uncertainty going forward on pricing. The year-to-date revenues, expenditures all seem pretty much within range of what's expected. No big surprises.
So far, so good. I mean, I would say typically local government lags the private industry market, right? So anything that we see corporations going through, it will lag before it hits us. So I would say the latter half of this year might get a little bit wilder. I would say at this moment in time, we're seeing revenues largely unaffected. We have some change out in our local restaurants, our local economy. We will start to see that soon. In our places for eating tax. Hopefully that'll turn over quickly, so that'll be kind of a blip on the radar. But as far as sales tax, I mean, the sales taxes that we're reporting this month were from December last year, so that's largely unaffected by any of this. But we are, with the tariffs, it's good and bad, right? So as electric and utility costs go up, we'll also see more tax revenue there, but in turn, our expenses may go up too.
I think car sales are also going to be a question mark, right?
Just
So-
about to ask
So
if
you've
we've
got
seen any uptick
what
in
we
car
have,
sales.
well, I don't think we've seen it. We don't have
Well, it's not
real-time
in
data
numbers
yet.
Yeah.
And frankly, the state has given us insight that the data is going to be a little shaky for a bit. But as they kind of go through, it sounds like a software upgrade or something.
They had some issue that the February data is bad.
You know, we have two of our car dealerships, our new car dealerships are cars not built in the United States. Some Mercedes are built in the United States with a large proportion of their parts that are constructed in other parts of the North American market as well as Europe. There was something today that said they're excluding car parts from the tariff structure for, I don't know, 60 days. It's the number of days all run together, but I have, there is some sense that you could see some level of depressed car sales at some point in the future. I don't know if we've seen that yet. CarMax has always been a really good leveling factor for us from the standpoint of vehicle sales, because as we saw during the pandemic, when you couldn't get new cars, used car sales blew through the roof. That may be true again, right? If there are some foreign car makers that have indicated they have stopped or slowed deliveries to the United States. Land Rover being one of them. We don't have those dealerships, Land Rover or Jaguar, they're in Northfield, but Mini is built by BMW. They're all built out of the United States. Mercedes, as I said, has some in and some out, but we'll see. That is the other kind of concerning factor, is just kind of overall depressed car sales. Kind of harkening back to what we saw during the pandemic, where just vehicle production couldn't match demand because they were short of certain critical materials. So
And recession would be bad for the pension fund. Putting aside
Yes.
everything else,
Yes.
Accurate.
is there a theory that eventually we get that money back? You know, the market, you know, during the depression of the 30s, it took 20 years. But most of our ups and downs, it comes back sooner. So in
Yeah.
theory, if we have to pony up more next year, when the recession goes away, the market goes up, we have to pay less.
Well, it's interesting because next year really will be based off of last year, end of 2024. It's really like our 2027 budget
Yeah.
may be the one that's more impacted because of the year end, and that's where you base your contributions. But your question, to your question, yes. You know, over time, we've seen that be true. IMRF, for instance, is exceedingly well capitalized. I mean, yes, it was a bad year in 08, but they bounced back by 2012. The smaller pension funds, and this may be a test of this new structure with the downstate police and fire pension funds. Now that they're aggregated together, is that going to help or hurt? Nobody knows yet because we haven't seen a downturn in the economy since that has happened. So, yeah.
Generally, you're funding on a longer term horizon, right? So there's lots of studies that say you can get an 8% return on a pension fund when you look at it like a 30-year horizon. The challenge in a year that you lose is if you're not funded to begin with and you lose 25%, not only do you have to pay your 25, but plus, right, to make up that lost time. So it takes several years to recover or a wild market to get that money back.
Well, and rates would collapse, right? I mean, we had zero rates from, you know, 09 through 2022.
Mhm.
So this downturn, if we have a downturn, then you're gonna see yield spin, which is probably more impactful to the pension.
Yeah.
Than if equities drop 20%.
Yeah.
If the 10-year goes from 4.5 to 2,
Yes.
you know, if front end of the curve goes from 5 to 2, then our pension obligations, especially as you take them out, you know, we can't buy that 5% bond to match our 20-year
Right.
liability. Our pension obligation will go significant.
Yeah, but there's a weird set of factors going on here that we've not seen before.
Mm.
And we've got, you know, lots of players that would normally be.
That's why a lot of people like us
US
included-
debt.
When equities ripped in 2023,
Yeah.
while rates were still high, everybody de-risked their pensions. Everybody hedged up their pension, hedged up their liabilities. So you saw all the corporate DB plans do that because this exact scenario. Now when rates were higher because of inflation, it becomes lower with a recession, which seems they may actually be not afraid to do to get rates lower. There'd be a nightmare for people that are not, well, for active pension funds, I should say, including every public pension.
The other exacerbating point that took place in 08, 9, 10, 11 was you saw a heightened retirement rate. And so you were drawing off of those pension funds as the pension funds capital was being reduced in the first place. There were a lot of those problems. We won't have that issue. We just don't have as many people eligible at this moment. So if over the next couple of years, at least we won't see a massive fleeing. But that always has a substantial impact when that hits it at the same time. So it's going to be a unique time for us to try to guess. And I say that completely straight faced. There's a lot of guessing going on.
Well,
Some more than others.
the pension issue will be most likely. Okay, temporarily gotta put in extra because even with the, was it 5-year averaging or whatever the term is. You know, numbers went down, okay. Numbers historically will go back up. And I don't really think, you know, absent the total depression, this is no reason for doom and gloom or anybody to think that that's going to happen.
There you go.
So, and the good news is, when I look at our reserve monitoring sheet, I go, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We have to cut a few things, we may have to delay a few things. That's the whole point of doing these very frequently, et cetera, and keeping on top of it all and making sure we have reserves for a rainy day.
The other thing that protects us in a significant economic downturn, and this was true in 2008, 9, and 10, was our revenue stream is much more predictable than communities that are far more reliant on sales taxes or other use taxes. So having the amount of reliance upon property taxes that we do is a bit of a leveling factor, and it can help us weather the storm very differently than a community that is much more sales tax driven, right? And now, that being said, our reliance on sales tax is far higher today than it was in 2008. We are producing more sales tax, and the leveling the playing field legislation is allowing us to collect sales tax that we didn't have access to. So if you see a big dip in Amazon sales or other online purchases that get delivered here, that's going to hurt us more than it did in 08. So those are just, again, these are things that we are aware of that we're just going to have to some degree wait and see. But we do have a predictable and reliable tax base in the property tax structure that we have. And just the general wealth of the community that can help to blunt a bit of this. So they're going to pay their property taxes. But it's going to be an interesting few years for us. And it's going to make it a little harder as we build out the CIP, because I think that's where, as we start to look at vehicle or equipment or major capital projects, the other thing that may change is just borrowing costs, right? We have more authority to borrow, but it's going to be more expensive to do it, even with a AAA.
By the way, did you all see the story today about senators that want to take a look at the hedge funds that own the companies that make all the fire trucks in the United States, or almost all the fire trucks in the United States, and go, they've been hearing from people all over the country, municipalities all over the country, that we can't get them, we can't get the repairs, we can't get the parts. It's not even a question of what it costs. It's like, so you guys are holding back, and they want to talk to these people. They go, are you guys holding back just to jack it all up in terms of costs?
Fake scarcity.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting to see what happens there. And that, by the way, that's a bipartisan. It was a Democratic senator and a Republican senator that were starting to ask these questions and going, we want them here to talk to us.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. Good.
That concludes our treasurer's report.
Good transition to the CIP.
And it's a good transition to the
Yeah.
CIP.
Yeah.
Hand this over to.
So the projects that are going to the board for the April board approval, 2 CIP projects are our annual sidewalk repair and replace. This year we included that bid with our pedestrian crossing improvements, so that is a combined joint project. And that will be in the amount of $372,000, which is slightly over the proposed budget. The other one is the construction engineering for the Dundee water main improvements that are ongoing, and that will be for $275,000. Any questions on either of those two? Changes to the CIP timeline. These are just a reminder, because I know this timeline is new. We've marked those changes with the pink cells in the file. So the first one is for bridge maintenance, construction and engineering for Scott Avenue Bridge. We've kind of pushed that timeline back about a month or two. We've been working with our consultant. They've completed their biannual bridge assessment for all of our bridges throughout the village. Specifically, some of the results that they saw from that inspection for Scott Avenue. They're kind of reconsidering the original proposed plan, which was to start with some spot repairs, spot steel repairs. They're now saying it looks like some of the preliminary results are saying we can wait and maybe combine that for one major overall rehab project instead of doing the advanced spot repairs. So just giving us a little bit more time to evaluate those results and finalize a plan moving forward. So that's been delayed. The new symbol that we placed on this timeline, which is an X. So I want to explain what we mean by that. But we had planned to do some preliminary design on a variety of small stormwater projects. These are projects that we had kind of identified as needing attention. We bundled them together. We were going to go out to RFP with them, but given the fact that we just awarded the stormwater master planning, we actually think it would be more effective to go with the consultant that was selected for that because they will be doing the modeling overall town-wide. So we're just gonna work with them to include that in their scope of work. So
Order of some sort.
potentially, yes. So that X is basically, yeah. Not anticipating, yes, kind of combining it, that line item might be absorbed into the overall stormwater master plan. And then the next shift, we had just talked about this sidewalk repair and replacement. We thought we were gonna be ready to bring that to you last month. The timeline for going out to bid, we thought we were gonna be good. We actually only received 2 bid results. And the low bidder, we've never worked with before. So we hit pause on that. We're ready to come to you guys this month. But it's with the new contractor, we wanted to call and check out the references, have a meeting with them, get a really good understanding of their capability, make sure they understood the scope of work. So we've checked all those boxes. They had great references. So we're confident to be moving forward with that.
Well, just out of curiosity, why do you think we so few bids for that this time?
You know, honestly, concrete work, there's just not a lot of companies that do it in general, or contractors. Schroeder and Schroeder, who we've worked with in the past, I think kind of does a lot of the work in the area. And they're good at it and we're comfortable working with them. They did not respond, so we actually called them as well too and say, why didn't you? They're just too busy. You know, we thought, we usually work with them through the MPI contract. We thought by creating this larger project, it might be more appealing to them to respond outside of the MPI contract. But no, they're too busy. So who
it'd
we're
be better
going,
than to break contracts up into smaller pieces again
well,
for projects.
we go through the MPI contract, which is the regional, several municipalities come together and bid the work jointly together. So.
To make a bigger contract, so you hopefully get more people to bid on.
Yeah, but they just, this is weird. Do you think it's just a timing issue? Like
Well,
this won't be the normal?
that's- So we did think about, you know, should we just go back out to bid, because we only got 2 bid results. To your point of, you know, is it just a timing issue? I think there's not very many players in the game issue.
Yeah.
And so with Miller Pipeline, and I think their name kind of indicates like, right, what is a pipeline contractor doing, proposing on concrete work? They have a whole restoration division who is branching out and trying to get into this work because they see an opportunity. And I think the opportunity is there's just not a lot of players doing concrete work. Concrete work in general is something that we've talked about as a need, obviously, you know, it's a need all throughout the year. And this is how, you know, historically we've worked with that need, is to bundle all this work together through sidewalk repairs. I mean, there's curb work associated with this. You know, if we're taking all of our concrete needs and putting it in one scope, it's something where there's just not a lot of that skill or expertise.
So meanwhile, you're okay with the low bidder at this point,
Correct.
and we're okay with the bid.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's obviously rolling the dice to put your hand up again.
I agree.
You know, who knows?
Yeah.
Correct, yeah, that's what we, and we didn't want to delay, I mean, I think too, we're ready to get going on the work. So this year, like I said, how it's different from most years, this year's we've added in the pedestrian improvements. So there's a lot of intersections where we'll be doing, you know, the ADA intersection upgrades. And I think that just makes it a little unique as well.
Yeah, it's not just having guys rolling
Rip and
with the
replace.
trucks
Yeah,
and pouring and going.
there is some design that was done for this work. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's all local. Can't blame that one on tariffs.
No, no, yeah.
Well, you
Um,
could try.
We can try.
No,
The
no
next.
need. There'll be enough. Yeah, there'll be enough for all stuff, yeah.
The next update is on a project that's a carryover from last year, our 2020 purchase, or 2024 purchase of truck 20. This is just for the outfit. So the truck was purchased, it's been delivered, but this is for the outfit of the plow. If you remember when I talked to you last year, the company we were gonna have outfit the plow didn't have the right equipment, so we shifted gears, picked a new company. We just had to push that timeline because they still do not have the time to get it done. So we're expecting that will happen, not until the latter part of the year. So I think we're showing, what is it? September, October, yeah. So I think in October, it'll be ready before next
Before we
snow
need
days. Yes,
Yes.
yes, which is the important part.
You might need Juno.
Oh, it's Chicago. Stop. Please don't say that.
Yeah.
This weekend. You're not allowed to conjure that.
And the last change is with the IT network, the installation of air fiber. I think we had shifted gears, found a new plan. When we went out and got quotes on this new plan, some of the pricing came back higher than we expected. So we're still kind of shuffling around trying to figure out what the best approach is. And happy to answer any other questions about projects that haven't had new changes in the timeline. I know Sean has some updates on the public safety. Do you wanna?
Yeah, sure. Some four very brief points in your finance committee packet, some referencing page 51, starting at the bottom. For a rollover project, the license plate reader camera system has been successfully installed in both of the new CSO vehicles. Chevy Blazers, the systems themselves are both functioning very well. So that was a reinstall, taking one of the systems off of an old one and then putting in a new vehicle, and then an entirely new purchase. So we're very happy with that. Both of them. One or two vehicles is down for service, but we're anticipating, fingers crossed, LPR systems will be functioning well. That's also then moving up to the emergency water siren replacement. I keep on calling it the air raid siren. It's not an air raid siren, but that is on track for a 01 May purchase with a summer install. So July is still going to be tracking. The automated external, the AED, so the automated external defibrillators replacements. That delay is, we are ready to make purchases now, but we're hoping to recoup some of the value of some of the money back as far as funding goes. We have a joint public works and public safety grant application that we're waiting. We've already submitted for with ComEd, Powering Safe Communities. We're waiting to hear back from that to see if we're going to be awarded anything, and at which point we're ready to make purchases. A little bit cheaper. So with a that'll be a September closeout, we're looking to bring for the board potentially in July. And lastly, the last public safety replacement support vehicle. That's the third Blazer, Chevy Blazer. That is right now as an update that is presently with Curry Motors. It's in dealership now, and it is being. They're conducting their delivery inspection that is underway. They're going to retain that there on site, and we're going to have it shipped directly to outfitters. Outfitters, again, it's a two-step process. Public Safety Direct, we're very satisfied with the outfitting for the lights on it, but it also has to be stickered. So that's tracking for, we should be wrapped up. That's about a 2-month process as of right now. It's trying to get the new squad car vehicle or vehicles stickered and outfitted. So that should be a successful application. So that's all. Have you any questions on any of those 4 topics? That was riveting. They're all important. Yeah. So exciting. Thank you. Thank you.
Just a quick note. The construction engineering that Monica mentioned. I think we added $100,000 to the cost in the
Oh,
finance committee packet. What the board is approving is $175,000, so it's, we did it the right way. You're actually approving less than we said you were, but I just wanted to make mention of that in case you see that on Thursday night, and you're like, wait, I thought it was 275. It's 175.
Take the good news, thank you. To go back to the air fire, what's the timing on that? Cause that relates to security and everything else.
I think the original timing, we had thought that we were gonna come to you with, approval for purchase, this month, so we had just kind of shifted everything back 1 month for all. As far as, delivery, installation, that all shifted 1 month as well. But I don't know if you have any more insight.
That's actually on one of the projects, the project listings of, we're putting a pause on that. With everything going on of whether or not that's gonna proceed this year. So we still have to have internal conversations from a staff standpoint. But right now, we have redundancy built in that we have a hardwire connection to the water plant. It was never our intention to make that permanent. But it does buy us some time as to whether or not we're going to move forward with that solution, so. It was in the CIP for about $80,000 budgeted. We've been working with a company out of Texas to design it. So I don't know if we're running into materials issues, but that was part of the delay was going back to redesign to make sure it can withstand the winds off of the lake and the water plant.
It is an antenna system, a pole. It's it's a bigger process than it seems like it should be, but
And if we've seen 50-mile-an-hour winds.
it seems.
So
You can't build for 50-mile an
I
hour
was gonna
winds.
say,
You have to build for a lot more.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we've had local tornadoes.
According to the feds, we can just use signal.
There can.
Okay.
Budget calendar. This was in the packet, but.
I'm good.
You're good. Okay, so I apologize for the tiny print, but there's a lot before us. We've talked several times about expediting the budget process timeline. Largely to get out ahead of the budget, but also to build in some contingency time if something comes in that we're not expecting. This also proposes giving the board the draft budget in November for final approval, which will allow us to get away from a massive December board agenda. And it will also allow us to start the bidding process and contract process sooner than what we've done in years past. So we're actually talking about starting in May. We've established the draft budget calendar. We're going to be holding a budget workshop meeting, just kind of getting big ideas and goals from departments. With the idea in mind that we're going to have to be flexible depending on what happens the rest of this year. In June, you'll all have the joy of listening to our auditors and our actuaries coming in to present the results of 2024. And as Phil mentioned, that will determine our pension contribution for next year. So what will be really exciting is what happens the rest of this year and we'll talk about that this time next year. In July, we'll take a look at kicking off capital planning. And we will review the financial policies. We'll review the financial policies, which we may or may not want to make changes in July. We'll see because of the way things are changing. And then in August, we are going to make any additional fee survey recommendations. We are going to have a fee discussion with the finance committee sooner rather than later, so I won't wait until August to bring that discussion back. The goal is for us internally to get feedback from all of you, and then by August, we'll have recommendations that we'll be bringing forth as part of the budget process. The one exception to that process, I would say, is the grocery tax. That may be expedited, that conversation may be expedited, just to get
Yeah, you
that
have to
done.
have
in
that
time.
on board, it's got to approve it before October, and I don't know why we would even wait till last minute, I mean. is there
No,
anyone that thinks we're not doing this?
I think we're planning to have a recommendation for you guys next month.
Okay, good,
So
that's for $200,000 to $250,000 a year?
We'll
Can't
know,
imagine.
we'll know what our neighbors are doing.
everybody's doing it.
Okay, well, that's the
We've
answer.
been
They're not
contacted several
crazy.
times. I think there's.
Everyone was waiting for April 1st to end.
Yes, a lot of folks were waiting for the election cycle to finish so that you have your kind of permanent board in place, deciding that going forward. So because that's a revenue loss item, which is kind of a replacement in kind, that will fall outside of the budget schedule. We will bring that. I know the Illinois Municipal League has asked municipalities to pass that ordinance sooner rather than later as the spring legislative session continues. Understanding that the legislators' argument for making any future changes that would impact us would rely upon how many municipalities have enacted the tools that they've been given, right? So if a lot of municipalities don't enact the grocery tax, that could be viewed as a detriment in our negotiating stature, I guess I would say. So the lion's share of August will be on the staff side. So staff will be working on presenting the operating budget for preparation and review. We'll go through a series of internal checks on our end, just to fully vet that before it comes before this body. And then in September, we'll be looking at the financial forecasts and the draft tax levy and what that would look like for next year. Then October would be the draft budget workshop where we take over the finance committee and present the draft budget for your review. And then in November, the draft budget would be presented to the village board for final approval. This does give us a little bit of leeway in terms of the tax levy and the final budget. If anything comes up the latter half of this year, it allows us some time to pivot and make changes if we need to. So we still have that December meeting.
Anybody?
Thanks, thank you.
Yeah.
It's not an easy lift, so. Let us know if you need our.
We'll be talking about it a lot.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
It does really it still avoids the summer and summertime travel, so if people are away for a meeting, nobody's gonna miss much. Really, it gets started for you all in September and October, are the two big months.
Dudley, you, I know, have sent some emails. I assume those were legitimately from you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the new
About-
tax.
Yes.
Well,
Want to
there's
talk about that for a second?
there's a nonprofit organization that is promoting kind of a long-range look at budgeting. And in the town's organization, I guess I'll call them, has some packages that they put together. And it's been suggested to me it might be worth looking at kind of a long-term basis. Now, I know we've got some immediate issues we have to deal with, but they make the case that there's often some structural problems just in the way we're set up. And maybe there's some other things we can do from a financial perspective to deal with things on taking a very long-term perspective. It's called, I believe, Strong Towns, and you went to a Strong Towns presentation. I understand you thought it was pretty good. Yes. Yeah. But it is a big picture stuff.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I just wanted you to know that we were looking,
okay, yeah.
paying attention. Although my first response to anything like that out of the blue is like, is this legit? I'm not clicking on anything.
That's
Until I
good.
make sure it's
Wonderful.
legit.
well.
Great.
Oh, yeah, no. I drive my work, I drive my IT folks nuts. Is this for real? Yes, it's for real. It's a PDF committee.
Can I mention, Phil and I had talked about this, and as we do all of this, one of the things we should be thinking about is we're now home rule. And so as we're doing all this stuff, how's that matter? Is there any way we do it better, different?
Cheaper.
Well, yeah. And so
More efficient.
more, and, we already can say to our residents, we've helped you because we did 25-year bonds. And so you get the privilege of the village over 25 years pays a little bit more interest, but you residents pay less every year. But there probably are, dozens of those things that we should at least be thinking about, and we can look at, all of our neighbors are home rule, maybe they already thought of it. But as we do this, let's just remember, we were really good before, and we were experts at doing this non-home rule, but we now have this additional tool, and can we help ourselves?
Yeah, as Howard and I were talking about, what it really is it's going to take time for everybody to get comfortable in a different environment, right? With home rule, with non-home rule, you have very distinct guardrails that surround you wherever you look. In most cases, those guardrails go away, and it's not dangerous, it's opportunity, right? That is in front of us. And admittedly, this isn't an environment that most of our staff has operated within. Most of us are pretty comfortable in the non-home rule world. It's been 11 and a half years since I've been in a home rule community, about 7 years for you. And there's a little bit of retraining that comes along, because the first question in a non-home rule is, how do we do this? And the first question in a home rule is, how do we want to do this? It's not a question of if, almost ever. So that's both fun and a little overwhelming. And it will be for you all too, because it kind of doesn't matter what the neighbors are doing. They're doing what they want. You can do whatever you want. Within reason.
Good ideas that we can.
Right, all I'm saying is, we don't have to follow their lead.
It's one way to run the playbook.
Yes.
But we have.
Yes.
Right.
It's,
Right.
we can.
And I will tell you, not everything that a home rule community, 2 or 3 communities over, is doing makes sense here. Right? So that's the other contributing factor to that. So as we talk about these things, it really is kind of a flex your wings, spread them out a little bit and see how this feels. And if it's too frightening, okay, we'll pull back, right? But don't think that we're going to be overly constrained in the budget development process. I think we're going to talk about some interesting different ways of approaching revenue streams. I would tell you, I think from an efficiency standpoint, we're already pretty efficient, but there's certainly things that we can do better. And it's, I think the sky is the limit, if you look at it that way, of what you could try.
Well, I mean, everything from a lot of Paul's and Monica's department in terms of, just putting all the capital projects together that ought to be together. So you're not ripping up a street 3 times instead of doing it once. And then the timing of all that, once you no longer have to worry about the election cycle for your bonds, is a huge amount of flexibility that can add efficiency and cost savings to us.
Right.
So right there, even before you start looking for external sources of who comes into this town and what do they do here? And what might, small amount of money might we try to ask of them? You know, because now we're home rule and we can't. You know, so hopefully.
Well, and we're gonna have to test the limits of what you all are gonna be comfortable with debt schedules and those kinds of things. We could do a debt issuance every year at this point. We have the ability to do that. You don't have to wait for anything. I'm not saying that's what we're gonna recommend, but I'm saying we have the ability to do, you don't calm down over there. I'm not committing you to anything, but I'm saying that from the standpoint.
We've been doing that.
Well, we kind of have, yeah, that's true. But we have the ability to do, for instance, we don't have to cluster all of our streets into 3 years. Right? We can do an annual street maintenance program. We can do things on a more regular basis that perhaps doesn't cluster up all the work for staff. And those are those really crazy years where we have so much happening that we can't finish everything, right? That's how do we smooth it out? What are the paths forward on that front? And again, I think we're all gonna have to kind of feel our way through it for the first couple years to really kind of get the feel of what it feels like to ride without training wheels.
Right, and putting it all back to the financial uncertainty that our current economic times put us in, making sure we're staying for all of that and all the flexibility and everything else. At the end of the day, there are only so many dollars coming in from whatever the heck source it is.
Yeah.
We have a AAA rating. We're going to keep the AAA rating, not just because it saves us money on bonds, but because there can be shocks to the system, and this town should be able to weather them without everybody, you know, hair lighting on fire.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to continue to be able to do. At the end, you know, make use of all these things to help us be more efficient, et cetera. But it may be that means, yeah, do it more, you issue bonds more often. As much in, you know, money dollars. It's not, we're gonna, I want to make sure that anybody that looks at this understands, it's not that we're gonna be spending money here, there, and everywhere.
Right.
It's about actually spending it more efficiently or same dollars for or less for the village. And finding other sources to help prop up and to deal with some of the shocks that may be coming to our system.
If I could add to that, not only the dollars, it's flexibility in personnel administration. We've saved some money there already. Maybe in the zoning, planning, economic development area, you know, things that aren't directly traced to dollars, which gives you more flexibility.
Yep. Anything else? Rather freewheeling conversation. Okay, if not, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Welcome and thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it.